Welcome to this segment of the show where we do speak to people in the know and do discuss issues that are currently trending. And of course, the biggest thing trending right now is Barack Obama's win for his second full-year term. Now, in 2008, his campaigns were dominated by quite a lot of support from across the world. And, well, it seems like since his first term, or towards the end of his first term, a lot of people started having all these mixed feelings about his policies, his foreign policy, and how he runs the economy, about how he runs the health system in the United States. But majorly for us in Africa, it has always been about the foreign policy and whether or not he has handled issues, quite very satisfactorily. We would look at maybe the issues to do with how much America had to play in terms of, the uprisings in North Africa, and also a whole lot more in terms of supporting African projects as well as African development. And joining us in the studio this morning is Martin Mutua, the senior news editor with the Standard newspaper, and he's going to be telling us what Barack Obama's win means to us as Kenyans in any case. This is the home of his grandfather, and well, a whole lot of support did come from Kogelo and the rest of Kenya during, the election process. And after he was declared winner, Kenya was all up in celebrations and jubilations on his, victory. But what does this mean to us as Kenyans? What does it mean to us as Africans? What does it mean to the world anyway? And if there are any key issues you think that maybe he might not have tackled quite very well in his first term, what do you think he needs to change in his second term? Well, join me as I speak to Martin Mutua of the Standard paper. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
Yeah, once again, actually,
Yeah.
I'm so glad to have you here. Now, well, let's get into the issue here. First of all, what do you think about President Barack Obama now that he has a full-year term ahead of him?
Well, it's a good thing in terms of the fact that he's the first black, African American to head one of the most greatest nation in this world, that is the U.S. It's a good thing. It shows that Africans, even as much of we've gone through many problems and we've been demeaned and underrated, we can do as well as much as our counterparts. So in terms of having him re-elected, that shows the American people have given him a lot of confidence, and that's good for the African continent. But on the flip side, in terms of what Africa is to expect from Obama, I think it's a lot.
So what is in it for us as Africans?
As Africans, because during his first term, as you could recall, I think he even just made one stopover in Africa. He went to Ghana, and then I think one more country, and then he took off. So, and he has not had a lot of, in terms of what agenda the American government has for Africa. If you look at in terms of opportunities, in terms of offering opportunities for the African governments, that has not been forthcoming. The Republicans actually had a better agenda for the African continent when they were in power, as opposed to the Democrats. I think the Democrats are more interested in matters of governance and lecturing us on how we should have good governance and stuff like that. But in terms of opening up resources and opportunities for the people in Africa, that has been lacking. So I think the fact that first time maybe he did not want to be seen as favoring from where he is coming from, so that he could be able. Is that why
he didn't visit Kenya?
I guess maybe that's why he could, so that he can endear himself to the Americans for the second term. That's something that is negotiable or debatable. So I hope now that he has a second term, I don't think he has anything to fear or anything to lose if he moves towards his relationship with Africa, and in particular, he needs to come to Kenya if at all he believes he has roots here. Otherwise, we don't want to see him here when he has already retired and he wants to come here as a retired president. He should, because his visit here would also mean a lot, because that would open up the markets in terms of even foreign investors. That would give a plus in terms of how this is a continent and this is a country that requires more investors to visit. So it's a whole spectrum of issues that would arise in the event that he just came to visit here, not just to see his grandmother, but just to move the economy of this country forward. So those are issues that I think he will need to grapple with. I think even as he attempts or he makes that move to come and visit us, it would be, he's also caught up in another web in terms of what is before us, in terms of we have people who have been indicted in the International Criminal Court. So the international community has been very skeptical in terms of how they deal with us because of that particular case. You've had even, I think, early this year, the UK ambassador had talked about how his country would not deal with the suspects who have been arraigned before the ICC. And it makes matters complicated because these the ICC suspects are people who are front runners in the presidential race that we are about to have in next year.
That's right, but you know, let's get into the issues where we see some of the achievements that President Barack Obama, you know, could have you know, had in his first term. And when it comes to issues like fighting terrorism, and you know, we see that in his first term, one of the biggest terrorists this world has, that is Osama bin Laden, was killed. What does this mean to the world and the fight against terrorism?
In terms of the fight against terrorism, he has done pretty well in terms of, and even there are things within the international circles which he managed to fulfill. He promised to end the war in Iraq, which he did, and concluded by the capture. I mean, by the Osama bin Laden being removed from the scene, and the war also in Afghanistan. The way he decided to, he had vowed to end that war, and he has managed to do that. That he kept his word. And in terms of terrorism, terrorism is a peculiar thing, is a unique thing in terms of, it's something that affect the international, whereas it affect the international community, even in its small or in its view in the local scene where it's being affected in Africa, it also resonates in the international community. So it's something that must be fought at all fronts. So you can't say that he has managed to deal with terrorism. Terrorism is something that is a concerted effort. So it's something that will continue being dealt with by all the players that are working together to deal with this matter. But in terms of how he managed to run the country in the U.S., he has had difficulties in terms of the economy. If you look at the figures, the way they have been projected, the issue of the tax, he has a problem with about, I think, is it $6 trillion US dollars that in terms of the tax revenues. And then you also have, we've seen as a problem with the issue of the national debt. America is running into about, I think, 16 trillion US dollars debt or pertaining to national debt. Those are issues that he needs to tackle with, because they were actually the matters that almost derailed his presidential bid in this just concluded election. So the issues of taxes and national debt and how he's running the economy is something that he will need to put together, his act together, if he has to make an impact as he exceeds in this second term. But he's also getting another challenge in terms of that. The Democrats managed to win the Senate, but they don't have the Congress. Yes, and they don't have the House of Representatives. So it is like a check and balance, and the Republicans are the ones dominating the Congress, whereas the Senate is with the Democrats. So in the event that the legislations pass through the Senate, the Congress could veto them, and so you have this seesaw kind of game. And it's something also that we will need to understand when we get to the next election here, because for the first time we are going to have a Senate, yes, and we have a National Assembly. So whoever is going to win the elections, if he doesn't have control of both houses, he gets a problem, and he needs to be in very good books with the people people who are in authority, so that he can be able to jiggle and balance these matters. So it's something that he also needs to be able to look at. And in terms of what legislation is going to put forward for the American people, and even for the international, that will affect the international community, he will be able to be juggling through these kind of situations.
Now, there's a whole lot of lessons that we can draw from the U.S. elections and, you know, the race, the entire presidential race. And what would you say is the biggest lesson that we can draw from the just concluded U.S. elections?
Well, what I can draw the lessons is that if you look at even the people who voted for Barack Obama, are not even the blacks. The whites are the ones who voted him, who are the majority. Less than 50% of those of the African Americans are the ones who voted for him, but the majority are on the other side. So I think the lessons that we should be drawing is that we have a problem also in our elections as we move on. You've seen already our leaders have already started going back to their ethnic cocoons and balkanizing the country in different forms in terms of, you have the big tribes and the small tribes. Those are not things that augur very well in terms of how we move towards an election. I think the fact that people can be able to vote for a particular candidate, irrespective of their race, irrespective of their color, irrespective of their political aspirations, those are issues that those are lessons we need to learn. You can see even in terms of when we had that problem at, you called Sandy, whatever, the storm.
Sandy, yeah.
Yes, you see even the Governor Christie at that particular point, who is a Republican, hailed Obama in terms of how he reacted to that situation. And that also went a long way in terms of how he got votes from some of the people who are supporting Mitt Romney. And I think in terms of how we move forward in our elections, we need to look at people, the leaders, in terms of whether they can be able to deliver, but not whether they come from what particular tribe or from what particular party, and how much propaganda or rhetoric that they are able to give out. But we should gauge our leaders in terms of how they are able to deliver and perform in terms of the majority of the population.
Let's talk about the entire voting process in the United States elections. You know, it seemed like everything there was peaceful, everything was done on schedule. Nothing you would say was actually behind schedule. What lessons are we to draw from that particular process?
First, the lessons that something that I enjoyed very much is even the coverage from the media there, and how the information was being relayed. But that has something to do with the effectiveness of the electoral commission there, the electoral body that was conducting the polls. If you have information of you have this tallying of votes coming in very effectively and moving on forward, it's easier also for the media to be able to pick it up and be able to analyze and be able to put these things in perspective for the majority to know. So if that boils down in our country in terms of the preparedness by our Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. If they put their act together, they already have the kits here for voter registration. If they conduct the whole exercise properly and ensure that information and the voting comes out, the tallies are out on schedule as they move out, and the media is able to get this information, then we can be able to make even those projections. I was very moved in terms of how from the CNN itself, you could see that they could even give a projection, and it went out. That is what turned out to be. So the fact that they got this information from the electoral body as it went out, it's what helps to make projections. But we can't make projections when you are waiting for some tallying from a certain center that takes about 6 to 7 hours, and you are not able to even to know what transpired in a particular polling station. So if we have those things sorted out, believe you me, the next election would not would not have any problems. And also in terms of when people have the results are out, you don't see people starting already moving to court, or you didn't see those kind of tensions, people refusing to accept defeat. Initially, Mitt Romney, yes, was reluctant to do that, but the fact that it went all beyond the tally that Obama was supposed to supersede, that there's 270 electoral votes, but he went all the way even past 300, Mitt Romney conceded defeat immediately, and America now is moving forward in terms of what it's doing. But here the problem is we would have elections, not just in Kenya, even in Africa. People, the moment results are announced, that's when you have chaos, you have people refusing to accept defeat, they bring all manner of stuff, and then you derail a country and you create tension, and that's not even good for the entire world.
But seeing all of that and, looking at the difference that we are having, with the United States as well as how elections are conducted in Africa, it tells quite a lot about the level of democracy at which we are. And in this case, one would actually wonder whether or not Africa maybe should just be left to govern their countries, or to African leaders should be left to govern their countries in the best way they see fit, as compared to, impounding democratic governance on us when it actually doesn't work for us.
That is when you're going to invite chaos. you leave things to African leaders to do their things, you will invite a lot of chaos, because that is when you will invite dictatorship, authoritarian regimes, because they will be able to stamp the authority and do things the way they want, because they will know nobody is watching them. But once they are aware that there's an oversight and there are people who are watching them, they would never attempt to do those kind of crazy things. So I wouldn't agree that you let Africa do whatever it has to do. We are now in a global village. You can't, what you do here, it affects the rest of the world. So, because the world also has interest in terms of what you are in that country. Like in this part of the world, we are strategically placed, and most of the international community operate from here, and they have their own interests. So you can't say that we would attempt to do that. You will be inviting chaos to the proportion that you will never be able to deal with.
All right, as we wind up, let's pay some special attention to Kenya. Kenya, from the time Barack Obama won his first term in the White House, it seemed like, Kenya in a way could have expected special attention, knowing that this is the home of his grandfather. Absolutely. And then President Barack Obama seemed to have, done the opposite. And maybe as much as we loved him the first time, it appears that this time round, people were not as excited as they were in, 2008. Do you think that maybe issues to do with the uprisings in North Africa and how much, he was willing to oust some of the long-serving leaders had anything to do with his, decrease in popularity, especially on the African continent and in Kenya?
First of all, I think his election to America, his first obligation and primary or cardinal principle was to the American people. So you have to give it to him, because he needed to get his feel with the American people, so that because he was focusing in terms of seeking a re-election. So if he would have created his attention more to the African continent, it would have been difficult for him to be felt on the other side. So maybe that was the first situation. The second situation is that we also have our own issues here in Africa, and the fact that he only went to Ghana, and because Ghana is perceived to be a country which, vis-a-vis, that is more democratic and operates democratically
than any other country on the continent.
Exactly. So he wanted to be associated with a country that seems, within the international eyes, that's a country that needs to be associated with. The other countries seem to be having more issues that he would not have wanted to be associated with. But now, like we said, he's on his second term. He's not going to seek another term. So he will be free. I would not be surprised if he makes his first stopover in Kenya. That I would not be surprised. But we also have our own issues. He would also not want to associate in a country that has problems or issues in terms of human rights issues and stuff like that, and governance problems. So in terms of that, he would also be, if he came to Kenya or he came to other parts of the country, of Africa, if there are issues in those countries, it will be an opportunity for him to put his foot down and state what he would want his country to, what he would want to see that country do. So it's also an opportunity for him to help, not to help as such, but to be seen to be aiding the African continent towards what he feels that the international community wants to see. If there are human rights issues in Africa, in some countries, let him come and say so, and let him pinpoint out what those human rights issues are. But in this part of the world, we also do not want people who come just to lecture us on governance issues. We have problems because we are unable to meet our budgetary constraints, and we are not able to make things ends meet. Let him also offer solutions in terms of how they're going to open up the international markets and international world, the resources they're going to give us here. So not aid. We don't need aid. We need markets, we need opportunities where we can be able to make ourselves stable. That's the way to go. So I hope those are issues that maybe in this kind of second term is going to deal with in terms of ensuring that situations change here.
Well, looking at the United States currently, they're experiencing unemployment rates of about 7.4%. And, you know, this did not deter the Americans from voting Barack Obama back into office. But it rather tells something that he did make history. He could be the only president who has been re-elected considering, you know, such an unemployment rate of 7.4%. But then, you know, it also does say something. The Americans have not previously been, you know, favorites of the Democrats. They've always been on the Republican side. And it could actually also tell something that maybe Americans have gone beyond, you know, the Republican issue and looking at how capable a commander-in-chief is, which is a different case for us in Africa. When we are used to a certain system, we always want to stay with that for about, you know, decades on and centuries on. And I think there is something that we can learn from that.
Exactly. And I think, like what happened, I think the lessons also to draw from the American elections is that the voters were endeared to the issues that were being placed on the table, as opposed to blocking their minds in terms of having the status quo that has always been, in terms of having only the conservative Republicans being the ones dominating the scene. They open up their minds, and I think they allowed Obama to speak to them, and he was able to endear to them and express these interests that you'll be able to deal with. So, as opposed to what we have in Africa, basically we never get to even our voting is basically ethnic. We tend to balkanize ourselves, and we tend to avoid dealing with the real issues. So I hope maybe with this kind of elections, the problem is we tend to forget very fast when things happen, just our doorsteps. We even tend to forget even warnings when we have warnings in terms of a crisis or a conflict that is supposed to come over, and warnings are issued. We even ignore those kinds of signs. So these are lessons that Kenya should learn. I hope even what happened to us in 2007 is a lesson that we should not allow that to happen when we get to the next election. But what do you see? Leaders, instead of driving people towards a different route to avoid things that are not able to lead you to certain situations, they instead drive you straight to where you're going to hit that brick wall. So I believe maybe with the international community watching and having one of our own in the U.S., I believe maybe the radar is even more higher now in terms as we head to the elections. So we would hope and believe that things are going to be straightened up as we move towards the elections.
Right. And some of the stories that are highlighted in today's Standard newspaper, if you get yourself a copy, you will read about how he promises to work with Romney on matters of national interest, and Obama is declared a winner after gaining, 306 electoral college votes against Mitt Romney's 203. And then he also says his re-election is perfection of America's colonies union 200 years ago. And also you will read about the second term that is set to be turbulent as Republicans control the House of Representatives. Also, you'll read about Obama's first call on winning was to Bill Clinton, who campaigned for him, and read about how that, has an impact on how we conduct our own elections and also the processes. You can also read about the promises to tackle issues that dogged his first term, that is in today's standard paper. And you'll read a whole lot more about his policies and what he wants to correct after he didn't make good, in his first promises. You can find all that in the standard paper. Now, let's look at some of the views that came through Twitter. We're having Simba Joseph, who is saying Kenyans should speak one language and stop tribalism like the people of America. And we're having Dan, whose Twitter handle is DanWatch, and he's saying, President Barack Obama's re-election does not mean much to us. Kenya never learns. How do I know? Simple. Who are you voting for? Why? All some of the issues that you need to read, you need to consider here. So President Barack Obama's re-election might not exactly mean much individually to us. And we're having Ita Godfrey, who is saying he did nothing to Kenya in his first win. Expect the same for 4 more years. And we're having Vince Kibet, who is saying no, it does. That is whether or not Barack Obama's re-election has an impact on us. It doesn't. We are an independent country. Kenya needs its own solutions, and we are the solution, not an external personality or a country. And we're having Winston, who is saying, well, I guess this one is quite a little bit off, but we're seeing some of the views that are coming through. People really don't have much hope in President Barack Obama doing much for Africa or for Kenya in this case.
That's what we're saying, because in his first term, we never felt him. He was never felt here at all. So not even a visit, nothing. So that's what we're saying. We hope maybe in this second term, because he will now not be seeking re-election, he has all the reasons to be here. And if he wants to lecture us from here, let him come here and lecture us from here. But in the process, the country will also be able to gain, and Kenyans will also be able to feel him. As at the moment, we are not able to feel him.
How would Kenyans like to feel Barack Obama? I think he has done quite a lot. And if he specifically paid attention to Kenya, I'm sure that would also ignite some sort of, controversy and debate over, the media and elsewhere. Because some people think that if he paid special attention to Kenya, then probably it would be for reasons that this is the home of his grandfather and nothing else.
There's nothing wrong with that. If he is able to come here because he has roots here, anybody would understand that. I mean, there's no way you can throw away your roots because you have ascended to a particular office. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. He doesn't have to pay special attention. He only needs to pay attention, not special attention. He should be here. If the last time he sent Hillary Clinton was here, Bill Clinton has also been here. No, he wasn't here. We went to Tanzania. Why wouldn't he be able to come here? There's nothing wrong that he stops him from here. He came when he was a senator. Why can't he come when he's president? There's nothing wrong. And the whole world knows that his father has roots here. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with him coming here. So those are issues that he needs to deal with. And I think, believe you me, he has every reason to make a stopover in this country, even just for once or twice, just to see, even if not to see his grandmother, but at least to do something, just to pass by and say, hello guys, I'm here, and at least I know I have roots here, because he has stayed here for a while. So he's gone to Hawaii, where he was raised.
As well as Indonesia.
Indonesia. So nobody has raised any tantrum. So if he comes to Africa and came to Kenya, which is a strategic country, there's nothing wrong. And even not just Kenya, let him visit most of the African countries as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, on a parting shot, I would like to know from you, what in particular do you think that Kenyans should do, at least to ensure that the coming elections for March 2013 are just as close to peaceful as they've been in the United States?
First, I think even as we want Kenyans to do whatever they want to do, we also need to put some facts to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. You've seen they have now extended the issue of voter registration, and they have not said until when, because they're saying they're doing training for their clerks. So we are running behind schedule. nobody knows if they're going to vote because nobody has been registered as a voter.
Right.
So we've been talking about an election which we don't know how we're going to vote. Nobody has been registered. Nobody has been told how they're going to vote, because this time around we have a whole different sort of an election, because we are doing it under a new dispensation, and we're going to elect more leaders as opposed to other elections. Nobody has come to tell people, look here, this is how we're going to do it. You're going to vote like this. This is where you're going to vote. So we must first put the basics on the table, ensure that people are in tandem in terms of how they're moving towards the election. They should have a voter's card. They should be told where they're going to vote, how they're going to vote, but not who they're going to vote for, but how they're going to vote, and the qualities of the leaders they're supposed to vote. And then thirdly, in terms of when all these things are done, then we need to know in terms of when we have the proper elections, definitely our leaders must be put in check. We have all these qualities that we have put in our constitution in terms of chapter 6 on leadership and integrity. Kenyans must be told to elect leaders of integrity and honesty in accordance with the constitution, so that we don't have a problem when we get towards the leadership, because when we tend to elect people who are not worthy being elected, then we get into problems. So once we do that, then Kenyans should be able to put their leaders to account in terms of who they're going to elect, and when they get to the election proper, let's be Kenyans. Because this is our country. If we don't get things right, we are going to sink together. But if we get things right, then there will be no cause for alarm. So I believe we still have much to do, but we're still dragging ourselves so much such that we might be caught up in the web, and then when we get there, things get bad, and then we start blaming ourselves. We don't have time for that. I think we need to move fast and ensure that everything is on track.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and also talking about the lessons we draw as Kenya from the re-election of President Barack Obama and generally the U.S. elections. It was an honor. We'll be glad to have you in the studio anytime.
Thank you, Doreen.
Now, 18 months of campaigning, 3 presidential debates, and billions of dollars spent, you can actually say the race to the White House came to an end very democratically, as, we saw an exemplary, election process there from the United States. And accepting the electorate as well is also one thing that I think Kenya needs to pay special attention to, because if you ask the question, do you trust the IEBC to hold credible elections or free and fair elections in this country, I'm sure some of you will have, mixed feelings or mixed reactions towards that. So trusting the electorate is one important thing as well. But you can continue the discussion on KTN Kenya, that is on Twitter as well as Facebook, and what lessons we draw from the United States elections. This is KTN Sunrise Live. Coming up in a short while, we are going to be speaking to Professor Nzioka Muthama, who is the chairman of the Kenya Meteorological Society, as well as the chairman of the Department of Meteorology, University of Nairobi, talking about climate change. If you noticed, we've been having, rains, I could call them El Nino rains, and they've been coming at a time when we do not expect them, considering the peaks of rainfall in Kenya. So he's going to be delving into that as well as issues pertaining to climate change. Do stay with us. We'll be right back.